Okay, so some equation solving. Here we have two like terms on the same side of our equation, so we're going to go ahead and add them together before we do anything else. So if you can simplify terms on one side of your equation, I would go ahead and do that to start with. And then we're going to work to get our variable by itself. So our variable x is part of that 4x term. So I'm going to isolate that 4x term by subtracting 9 from both sides of my equation, because on the left-hand side, that'll give me 9 minus 9 is 0, so just 4x. And on the right-hand side, that'll give me 12. So then I just have 4x equals 12. My goal is to get what 1x equals. So to undo the fact that I'm multiplying x by 4, I'm going to go ahead and divide both sides by 4. So that'll give me x, just x, not 4x, equals 3. And then we're going to double check our solution by plugging this back into my original and seeing if it makes a true equation or not. So you should never get an equation solving problem wrong, because you can check and see if you did it right. So if I go back to the very original, before I did anything else, and replace x with 3, let's see if we really do get 21. And yeah, we do, so we did it correctly. We're going to look at a couple of different ways that students solve the problem -3/5 w plus 1 equals 4. So let's start with the way that Alex did it. So what Alex did is, to start with, he went ahead and said, I'm going to get this -3/5 w that has my variable in it by itself. So he subtracted 1 from both sides. And then since it was -3/5 times w, to get w by itself, he divided both sides by -3/5, which is the same thing as multiplying by -5/3, and he ended up with w equals -5. If we look at Haven's, she started out a completely different way. I think she saw this division by 5 here, and then said, okay, I'm going to multiply both sides by 5, which is totally fine. There's lots of ways you can solve equations. So if you multiply both sides by 5, you need to make sure that you do go ahead and multiply in both sides, including that 1 right here by 5. So she took and multiplied 5 times her entire left side and her entire right side, which gave her -3w plus 5 equals 20. And then she treated it kind of like Alex did. She didn't have any fractions left anymore, so she worked on getting this term with their variable by itself. She subtracted 5 from both sides, and then divided both sides by -3 to get w equals 5. So they both got the same result, and they're both perfectly valid ways of solving the equation. Which method do you prefer, and why? Or would you do it a different way than either one of them did? Because I can think of a couple of additional ways that you might solve it as well. Okay, so on this one, our variable is part of the term -3/2 x. So I'm going to get that term by itself by subtracting 2 from both sides, because 2 minus 2 would give me 0, constants on the left, and just my -3/2 x term equals 4. And then you could do this in 1 step or 2 steps. I'm going to do it in 2 steps this time. So that's being divided by 2. It's like -3x over 2. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 2 to undo that division, which would just give me -3x equals 8. And then I'm going to divide by -3 to get x by itself. So you'll end up with x equals -8 over 3. Now I could have divided both sides by -3/2 or multiplied both sides by -2/3 instead of doing it in 2 steps as well. On D, you have variables on both sides of your equation. So I'm going to go ahead and get everything involving my variable x on one side. So I'm going to add 2x to both sides of my equation, because on the left that would just give me 9, and then I'll have 4x minus 7 on the right hand side. Now I'm going to add 7 to both sides to get my 4x term by itself, because -7 plus 7 would give me 0, and I'll have 16 equals 4x. If I divide both sides by 4, I'm going to come up with x equals 4. And quick reminder, you can always plug these back into the original to check and see if you're doing it correctly or not. Good idea. On E, I have a lot of distributive property here, so I need to go ahead and multiply my -4 times 2x plus 5 and my 2 times my negative x minus 9, which is going to give me that result. And then I'm going to work on, since on the right-hand side I have like terms, I'm going to go ahead and combine them. They aren't on different sides of my equation, so I'm literally just doing negative 2x minus 4x and getting negative 6x. And then I'm going to work on getting my variable on a single side of my equation. So I'm going to choose to add 8x to both sides, which is going to give me negative 20 equals 2x minus 18. And then I'm going to add 18 to both sides, working on getting that term with my variable by itself. So I'll have negative 2 equals 2x. And then to get 1x, I'm going to divide both sides by 2, which is going to give me x equals negative, let me pop that negative on there,